Greetings and salutations, folks. My name's Dante, and welcome to the first Middle Earth Musings podcast. So, this podcast is going to be the podcast extension of the Elemental Collective. Sometimes I'll do videos. We'll be doing interviews, fireside chats. But this one is just my first solo walk and talk, and brought some books with me. Brought my dog and a little bit of a lunch. So I'm just sitting here in a peaceful place, away from the Wi-Fi and the distractions. And I thought I'd just briefly go over the things that I'll be discussing and talking about. Yeah, so some of the books I brought today, I'll be reading from the Book of Five Rings, a classic text on Japanese Way of the Sword. Martin Heidegger's The Question Concerning Technology, Ecology, a Pocket Guide by Ernest Kallenbach, Stalking the Wild Asparagus by Yule Gibbons, and brought my Animal Tracks book. But instead of reading sources online, what I thought I'd do is bring my books along for the walk and have some conversations with people that are no longer here. Yeah, and having a setting in nature surrounded by the beautiful yellow Scotch broom in bloom right now. And I'm really stoked to share a lot of my thoughts and my meditations on what's been going on in the last few months, as well as the bigger picture and how we got here and how we arriving at this impasse of technology and the human response to it, the technocratic control aspect of it, are tapping into our fundamental natural resources and the source of all being, which to me is divine, and the earth, which is the divine creation of which we are a part, making all those connections and getting outside of the context of a purely online conversation, bringing it back to nature. So that's how this podcast is going to be different from maybe the typical YouTube or podcast you're listening to right now. I'll always take it outside. I'll take you for a walk, whether it's raining or hurricanes a-blowing. I just want to incorporate the surrounding of nature, because this is, to me, what we need to come back to. So it makes sense to, instead of being live in a studio, to come back outside, out of doors, and really get to these juicy matters that we need to discuss together. So first off, I'm going to discuss a little bit of my thoughts and insights into the cornholio virus and the ensuing lockdown. My skeptical, questioning mind and my intuition told me very early on that something was amiss before the pandemic, the plandemic, the scandemic was even thrust upon us. And as soon as the lockdown from the lockstep from up above came down upon the world's people, I knew we were moving into something pretty serious here. And working at the Elemental Collective with my beautiful community, we are more prepared than most people for what's to come. And I didn't for a minute buy into the fear-mongering of the media and the governments and the following steps towards tyranny that are still in place. And they have a plan, man. If you don't see it by now, I feel for you. You're pretty brainwashed, as we all were and continue to be. But you need to get outside of your little fear box, and we all need to wake up together, because this is coming down fast and hard, people. But it's difficult because these laws and these lockdowns have kept a good percentage of the people in fear, and yet at the same time, what I've noticed is an explosion of awakening happening, and the sharing of thoughts and resources, and also the censoring and shutting down of alternative ideas. We should be welcoming alternative ideas But unfortunately, people get their information from major media sources, and they tend to accept the first most dominant explanation that's in your face about this whole cornholio virus. Unfortunately, that's what sticks with a lot of people, and it's very difficult to convince them that they've been lied to show them, to demonstrate that they've been lied to. As Mark Twain once said, it's easier to fool people than to convince them they have been fooled. So we're in a situation of pre-planned mass lockdown, fear, hysteria, pharmaceutical inquisition, and yet there's pushback, and there's growing pushback, and that makes me excited. We have to know who our enemy is, and the enemy sometimes happens within our own self and our own souls. Whenever fear is the strongest voice, and if whether it comes from inside or out, you know you're being guided by an enemy if it shuts you down, if it blots out your clarity of mind, if it crushes your feelings, your connection to people, your ability to gather, your ability to be outside in nature where we should all be right now, especially if this pandemic was a real thing. Yeah, the mechanisms, the AI, the top down control matrix is really revealing itself. So, this is an opportunity to see our enemy clearly. To focus on that, I'm going to read from the Book of Five Rings and the focus of our eyes. And think of our eyes not just as our visual eyes, but our inner eye, our inner knowing. To see who the enemy is clearly in this war, this spiritual war, this information war. Here we go. The focus of the eyes depends on the school. There are those who fix their eyes on the opponent's sword, and there are those also who fix their eyes on the opponent's hands. There are those who fix their eyes on the opponent's face, and there are also those who fix their eyes on the opponent's feet, and so on. When you try to fix your eyes on some particular point, there is a sense of distraction, and this becomes what is known as an affliction in martial arts. People playing football may not keep their eyes on the ball, yet they can still steal it away with a kick and dribble it around, because when one is thoroughly practiced in something, it is not necessary to look deliberately. In the arts of jugglers, too, when they are practiced in the techniques, they can balance a door on the nose and juggle several swords at once, all without deliberately watching. Since they are involved in practice all the time, they see what is going on spontaneously. In the context of the science of martial arts as well, when you become familiar with each adversary, perceive the degree of seriousness of people's minds, and are able to practice the science effectively, you can see even the distance and speed of a sword. Generally speaking, the focus of the eyes in martial arts is on the hearts and minds of the people involved. When it comes to a large-scale military science, the eyes are also focused on the state of the opposing troops. Now, take these ideas and think of them, and think of the spiritual warfare that we're in right now, people, because we need to keep a wide-angled vision and a broad mind, and follow our arts and practice our arts well. We need to see clearly what's actually happening and not get locked down. This is why fear is dangerous. Fear locks us down into narrow vision. Okay, so I'll just read this last paragraph here. Of two ways of perception, observing and seeing, the observing eye is stronger, perceiving the heart and mind of the adversary, seeing the state of the situation, focusing the eyes broadly, perceiving the conditions for battle, perceiving the strength and weakness of the occasion, concentrating on seizing victory with precision. So there you have it. There's some great advice from a classic Japanese text on the way of the sword that is completely applicable to warriors of light. And we need to take up our swords of truth at this time in history. Now, more than ever, we are being called to take up the sword and to practice our art and to observe and see clearly the hearts and minds of not only our fellows, but the people above that are using this fear and you know seeing clearly into the matrix and the enemy. So that classic text is one beautiful insight into how we're moving and how we can move through this. Another theme that I really want to touch upon in some of these podcasts is the technological question, and how technology is eclipsing the natural, and how technology is also eclipsing our freedom. Our freedom and and nature go hand in hand. And with the lockdown, lockstep technocracy coming down upon our heads, we need to use the deepest insight that we have. We need to use our greatest allies in this fight. So yeah, I've been going to some of my masters, philosophers, touching in with their works and their books again lately. Again, I'm not going to be reading everything online. I'm just putting my finger on the pulse of the situation right now. But it's my deep thinking with other thinkers and people of the past that lived through a lot of these questionable times and periods that have great insight into what's happening right now. Yeah, technology seemingly can be our ally, and I'm using technology right now, and I'm going to use it as a sword, but I'm also going to use it as a way of observing and keeping my eyes on the hearts and minds of the enemy. So that's where books come into. The technology of the book is something that's decentralized and doesn't have to be plugged in, and yeah, it's portable, can be carried around, and once you've incorporated it, it never leaves you. It's like a master that you carry alongside with you. So thinking through the technological question in contrast to the question of love and freedom and power and responsibility, you know, these are the questions that I want to bring up. And lately I've been delving back into Heidegger, and he's a deep thinker on this concept of technology, and he's kind of he's a philosopher prophet in a way. He foresaw, by looking deep into the essence of technology, which he says is not technological. That is, it can't be understood through the technological. It it needs to be understood through a deep thinking and a seeing. He considers the essence of technology to be something he calls enframing, or basically putting into a frame or a box so that it sees the world and manifests the world in a way that everything is ready to be used. Machines that have parts and parts that are manufactured, and each part is part of the machinery of the matrix. And human beings and nature are now falling into this great reservoir of resources that are ready at hand and ready to be used by this technocratic intelligence, this AI, this artificial intelligence. So how can we combat this seemingly all-seeing eye of technocracy and these elite technocrats that are trying to control us top down through our own technology, by hypnotizing us, by entertaining us, by putting the fear in us? We have to be vigilant. We have to have the eye of the warrior, the observation of the warrior and the muse and the philosopher all at once. We need to look deep into our thinkers and our people, our guardians that are, as well as the creator, always tapping into the source, resourcing rather than being a resource. We need to take that power back. And one of the ways I am doing this, besides being out in nature and rewilding and recrafting and building community, is to go back to some of my teachers. So I'm going to read a little bit from Heidegger's question concerning technology here, just to give you an idea of technology is not inherently bad. Technology, he is not an anti-technological thinker. He sees into the essence of technology and the way that technology has its roots in poetry and a beloved way of being with the earth. So here we go. Once there was a time when the bringing forth of the true into the beautiful was called techne, and the poesis of the fine arts also was called techne. In Greece, at the outset of the destinying of the West, the arts soared to the supreme height of the revealing granted them. They brought the presence of the gods, brought the dialogue of divine and human destinings to radiance, and art was simply called techne. It was a single, manifold revealing. It was pious, promos, that is, yielding to the holding sway and the safekeeping of truth. Whether art may be granted this highest possibility of its essence in the midst of the extreme danger, no one can tell. And the danger he's referring to are from the poet Holderlin, who says, "But where danger is, grows the saving power also." Yet we can be astounded. Before what? Before this other possibility, that the frenziedness of technology may entrench itself everywhere to an extent that someday, throughout everything technological, the essence of technology may come to presence in the coming to pass of truth. Now, what the heck is he talking about here? Because the essence of technology is nothing technological, that is, it can't be understood through the technological. The essential reflection upon technology and decisive confrontation with it must happen in a realm that is, on the one hand, akin to the essence of technology, and on the other, fundamentally different from it. Such realm is art, but certainly only in reflection on art, for its part does not shut its eyes to the constellation of truth after which we are questioning. Yet the more questioningly we ponder the essence of technology, the more mysterious the essence of art becomes. The closer we come to the danger, the more brightly do the ways into the saving power begin to shine, and the more questioning we become. For questioning is the piety of thought. So forget all those people that are telling you not to question, that you're a conspiracy theorist, that are putting fear into skepticism. Shut all those people down. Tell them that you're questioning. Questioning is the piety of thought. Yeah, see how far that goes with them. Anyways, we're not slaves here. Let's throw off those shackles, people, once and for all. Let's step into our essential human being. Let's dance with God. Let's dance with creation. Art is one of the ways. Martial arts. These are ways that we can dance with creation and not be slaves to the matrix. We live in an ecology. Ecology is the logos of home, and Earth being our home, it has a logos. It has a divine way, a divine natural law that we've been confused about. We haven't been taught the natural way. Like, that should give us a clue just by going to our education systems. How are we being taught to live with the natural way, the logos of Earth? Are we being taught how to be gardeners, farmers, grow our own food, hunter-gatherers, skilled artisans, craftsmen? These are the arts and the technologies we have at our disposal, and we can use the high technology in order to connect us with these forgotten arts. You know, things like YouTube are great resources for learning skills and listening to teachings as well. So I'm trying to be a bridge between technology and nature, and I'm trying to make my life an example of being that bridge. So, because everything is interconnected, I know sounds like a cliche, but everything is interdependent, interconnected, and we need to feel this in the core of our being. We need to feel that question of being concerning technology, and the sword of truth are ways to fight off these forgettings, these amnesias that we have. So, at the Elemental Collective, we're working on this concept of interdependence. And elementary is also touching in with fire, earth, water, air, the ethers, all this electromagnetic radiation that's being tweaked in the ethers as well as this and the it's a war on the invisible, using these energies against us. How can we take back this power? How can we take back this energy? How can we acknowledge our interdependence with all life and all beings? This is ecology. This is the ecologos. So that brings me to the book Ecology, a Pocket Guide by Ernest Cullenbach. He's the author of Ecotopia. I'm just going to read this section on interdependence, and let's see what we can glean from it. No humans or other living beings can survive without multiple interconnections with other organisms. You were totally dependent on your mother's body before birth, and after birth you depended on parents and community. Throughout our lives, we depend on other humans for safety, food, shelter, comfort, love, hope, and joy. But we also depend on the whole biosphere for air to breathe, food to eat, materials for shelter, removal of waste, and all other necessities. This was always recognized by indigenous peoples, who have lived by gathering food and hunting animals. It is just as true for urbanized and industrialized peoples, who typically know a lot about buying things, yet almost know nothing about how to produce or find the necessities of life. All species, in fact, rely on many other species in complex webs of interdependence. Even though human interdependence with the natural order may not be obvious under modern conditions, it is profound. We only have to look a bit beneath the surface to see the interconnections. This page of paper, for instance, came from a tree. That tree's growth was powered by the energy of the sun, using carbon from the air and nitrogen and phosphorus that bacteria and fungi enabled it to take from the soil. It depended on rain from the clouds and winds. Ultimately, the paper's nutrient contents will be recycled by decomposer organisms and enter a new round of growth. We and all the things we use and eat are linked not only to life-driven cycles that bring us oxygen and essential nutrients, but also to thousands of unknown organisms. Sometimes these connections are very intimate. In the human gut, bacteria aid digestion and produce essential vitamins. Minute protists of various kinds, together with small animals, float in the oceans where they help regulate the temperature of the atmosphere, produce oxygen, and feed fish and marine mammals. Without innumerable, though usually unnoticed living companions such as these, we humans could not survive at all. In an ecological perspective, we are not alone, but parts of an ancient, earthly, interdependent collection of living beings. With every breath, we provide essential carbon dioxide for plants, doing our part in keeping life going. Every other living being makes its contributions too. On a deeper level, symbiosis, present or past, connects every living being to others. Strictly speaking, since none survives on its own, there is no such thing as a separate individual organism. We humans sometimes imagine that we can dominate and control nature, but the living world is not only much more vast than humanity, it is formidably complex, interconnected, and ever-changing in ways that are uncontrollable. We need to accept our independent role in the web of life and try to fill it responsibly. Hallelujah. Now there's some truth download for you. I feel it is important to say that we need to go back to books. We need to go back to nature, especially if we want to find ourselves on the winning side of this whole battle. We need to have our allies in our community. We need to defy orders that tell us that we aren't able to touch, see, feel, hear other beings, other human beings. Any kind of top-down order and any obeying of that order is a raw, naked power grab. And it's an attempt to control the life force itself, which ultimately is going to fail. But unfortunately, a lot of people are asleep at the wheel there, and we need to wake them up with love, with compassion, with fury and passion sometimes as well. It's not enough just to be Mr. Nice Guy. That has never worked. We can have compassion and love for our fellows and speak truth, and truth is not an easy thing to speak to ourselves sometimes too when we are lying to ourselves. We have to own that shit. So, yeah, I want to come to the end of this first conversation. It went on longer than I was expecting, but that's okay. I've got some cob making to do, and we're going to be working on our cob oven at the Elemental Collective, and making pizzas and having wild food pizza night really soon. We've got all kinds of projects, gardens on the go. There's going to be lots of interesting classes on seaweeds. Nature Chef Tom is going to be doing his own thing. I'm going to be welcoming back the kids to Elemental Academy. We're going to be going on some beautiful nature excursions with or without this lockdown. It's happening. Also, I made the acquaintance of David Whitehead, a truth warrior. He just lives down the road from me, him and his lovely wife, Monica. They teach martial arts, and right now David's just doing his podcast, and he's on it daily. So check him out at Truth Warrior on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. We're hoping to have a conversation by fire soon. Yeah, there's lots of really interesting guests and people that are going to be on this podcast. So I'm hoping to continue these kind of talks and conversations, and it'll be exciting once there's other voices as well. We'll be doing some videos on the land and some of the projects, so you'll get to see firsthand what we're up to. And Chautauqua is going to be coming up in summer solstice, and I've got a lot of work to do on the website, but our website is still up there at elementalcollective.ca. I have yet to put my own page up there, but there's a lot of it needs updating. So if you want to just quickly check it out, within a week it'll be upgraded, updated. I would love to have a separate platform for discussing and having conversations and with no censorship, but having a platform up there eventually where we can have open conversations and dialogues and beyond the fear factor, beyond the censorship and control, and see how long we can keep that going. Anyways, that's a project a little down the road. Yeah, and the other thing is Wolfpack is taking the form of sea wolves, and Wolfpack is nature play and nature exploration for adults. So I'm hoping to get that up and going within a week or two. So we'll keep you updated on events on the website soon. We're going to have a newsletter coming out soon as well. And lots of beautiful wild crafted ales and foods that are being done at the collective. I'm currently making a spruce tip, pollen, nettle, mint ale that'll be ready in a couple of weeks. And speaking of sweets from trees, that's the name of this chapter in Stalking the Wild Asparagus, the maple family. There's a quote from Thoreau at the beginning of this. For we can make liquor to sweeten our lips from pumpkins and parsnips and walnut tree chips. I don't know if you've tried our walnut tree chips, but we'll be having samples of our food at our next upcoming event, which I believe is going to be our pizza night. There's no specific date on that yet, but please come by and feel free to commingle, feel that human touch, human community, human love, and the warmth of the Shire. So that's all I got for today, folks. I really enjoyed this podcast. Doing this feels good to share my voice again. It's also weird to just talk into a microphone on an iPad in the middle of a field, but I can get used to this. All right. Aho, much love.